Welcome back to another episode. Today, I want to take a closer look at my favorite semiconductor company, Nvidia. More importantly, about 4 days ago, the company hosted their GTC Financial Analyst Q&A session. So, in today's episode, what I want to do is take a closer look at 11 slides I have created from this presentation that I think every Nvidia investor should know. More importantly, there is this one slide that really talks about a gold mine that a lot of companies are sitting on. And I'm super excited to dive into that a little bit deeper in the upcoming days. So make sure to stay tuned and let's get started with today's episode.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for their subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so throughout the episode, what I want to do is take a closer look at different slides, each dealing with a different topic. The first slide here is about sovereign AI. And an analyst was asking, hey, how big is this market? Jensen pretty much mentioned that it's a very, very big market. And there are going to be AIs that are going to be trained and continuously refined for just about every culture in the world. And this is a market that here in this channel, we've been following for multiple months. I don't believe anybody else has really been discussing sovereign AI as strongly as I have in this channel since early December. But sovereign AI is the overall customer is individual countries as they develop their own AI infrastructure to improve all their kind of solutions, being healthcare, being kind of transportation, energy efficiency, and the list goes on and on. So Jensen really believes this is a big market and this is something that we're going to start to grow throughout the upcoming years. Now, let's get into some interesting solutions here. The demand for Hopper after Blackwell, right? And this has been a very interesting question and topic that we've been hearing in the past few months, as some bears are saying that now that Blackwell is coming out, we're gonna see a slow in demand of Hopper, which is their current generation and their new generation. And Jensen's kind of is eliminating this bearish thesis. And they mentioned that, remember, Hopper and Blackwell, they're used for people operations and people need to operate today. And the demand is so great for Hoppers that most of their customers have actually known about Blackwell for some time. So it's kind of saying that just because we just showed Blackwell to the overall consumers or just the over the world in this past week, our big customers, they know everything from their capabilities, their spec, the amounts of power that they might need, and everything else. So they already knew that Blackwell was coming. What's fortunate for Nvidia is that the Hopper for the demand for Hopper doesn't change because the operations that we're seeing in AI are needed today and not tomorrow, not next week. So right now we're still seeing strong demand for Hopper, and we're still going to see strong demand for Blackwell as it's going to provide better solutions than Hopper. So not much of a bearish thesis there. Before we go any further, I just want to say thank you all for the amazing support we are getting in this channel. We're closing into 40,000 subs. That is insane. So if you haven't and you are enjoying the content, make sure to hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button. Finally, if you want to support this channel a little bit more, check out my special offer at fool.com/Jose. Now back to today's episode. Now, another question that we saw is the overall manufacturing capacity of Blackwell. And we know that for Hopper did have some form of supply constraint because what is called their CoWoS advanced packaging. So many investors are wondering, hey, Jose, what is the advanced packaging or what is going to be the supply chain effect for Blackwell? It's going to be very similar to Hopper. And the answer is yes, but it's going to be a little bit different. So obviously with the new architecture of Blackwell, you're seeing a new version of CoWoS. They're calling it CoWoS L, which is a larger CoWoS solution. But outside of that, obviously, you're dealing with things like new memory, new complexities in the overall manufacturing process. So at the end of the day, this is going to have some form of bottlenecks. So there is going to be some form of supply constraints. Luckily for Nvidia, they've already done this, right? Hopper was a bit of a difference. And here I have a second slide. There is a big benefit with Blackwell versus Hopper, and that is that they're not going to be surprised this time. Hopper was a great product, but Hopper kind of came out at that same moment when the chat GPT revolution happened. So the demand for Hopper was so sharp. It was just a super exponential growth compared to what they originally estimated that they needed. But now with Blackwell, they already know what to expect and they already know that they have this huge demand. So they've been working with the supply chain team for the numerous years, for the past year, to make sure that they will be able to improve their overall capacity and supply chain. So they're working really closely with companies like TSMC, and they geared up for an exciting ramp. So I do believe the ramp here for Blackwell is going to be much stronger than for Hopper, but at the same time is still going to be supply constrained, as one, demand is too high, and second, we still have to deal with things like advanced packaging that obviously have some form of capacity issues at the moment. So I think that was great to understand of where we're going with their overall capacity solutions. Now, a next question is: we did hear that the B100 will have kind of a drop and play on H100. So someone who has an H100 can just buy a B100 and can just pretty much do a drop and play. And an analyst was wondering, is this a bad thing? Is this going to eat up Hopper's lunch? And Jensen mentions that no, right now we're still upgrading the slowest computers into data centers. And there's millions and millions, trillions, $1 trillion worth of computers that still need to be accelerated, which are mainly CPUs. So most of the Blackwell is going to go into fixing those kinds of slow computers. And eventually they're going to make it into replacing Amperes and eventually replacing Hoppers, but it doesn't seem like that's an issue for now. That's an issue for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now. He doesn't know the exact number, but the B100 is not going to replace H100 systems. It's going to replace slower CPU systems that the overall data center market is flooded with. So some great news there. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that Jensen believes there's a secret gold mine, and this got me really excited. I'm actually going to take a closer look at this on another episode, so maybe we can look at a few companies that are dealing in this secret gold mine. But the secret gold mine is all these tool companies like Synopsys, like Cadence, that they have all this data. And with all this data, they can create kind of co-pilots, and these co-pilots eventually can be kind of licensed or even rented out as engineers. For example, let's say Synopsys is a great company that has tools to design chips. Well, they have all this data. So with all that data, they can create a co-pilot agent that is great at designing chips. So in the future, they can have the ability to, hey, look, we have this AI agent. If you want to build chips, sure, you can have a chip designer engineer, but you might also need a co-pilot to help that AI engineer. So they can rent them out, and other companies can hire them as an engineer apprentice to some extent. And there's a lot of companies that have a lot of data set, and we can see from here that they've talked to Jensen has talked to a lot of people, and he says he's excited for them, as every time they see them, they tell him, hey, look, you're sitting on a gold mine right now. And I already can think about at least 5 companies from the top of my head outside of the ones we see here. But like I mentioned, this is going to be another great episode where we can discuss the future growth of AI solutions. Now, another question here, and this is something that I did notice, and we've talked about it in the previous keynote episode, where it does seem like the Grace Blackwell 200 is more important than the Grace Hopper 200. And for those that are not familiar, the Grace Blackwell 200 is their Grace CPU, their super chip, right? The Grace CPU powered up with 2 GPUs. The Grace Hopper was one Grace CPU and one Hopper GPU. And then the answer was saying, hey, look, why the major change in tone? It seems like the Grace Hopper 200 was good. You guys were talking about it, but the Grace Blackwell 200 seems to be a core product. And Jensen mentioned that the simple answer is the Grace Hopper and the Grace Hopper in general didn't have much time to take off significantly, especially as this company was kind of focusing already in the Blackwell. So Grace Blackwell is already here. So it was like, sure, we could have pumped up the Grace Hopper a little bit better, more, but we already knew that around the corner, the Grace Blackwell was going to come out, and that was going to be a way better solution. And that's why the GB200 is more important than the GH200 in general. Now, what is the secret sauce of the Grace Blackwell 200? And pretty much the benefit of the Grace Blackwell is in the case is not necessarily the CPU. Some people are going to say, hey, look, Jose, the Grace is a better CPU than some of the other solutions. And that's not necessarily the case. It's more that they can create a larger NV-link domain, which allows more of these systems to look like one chip. So if you want something like really good inference performing, you're going to need NV-Link, and that's one of the secret sauces of the Grace Blackwell 200. So there's going to be a nice amount of workload solutions where you're going to want a chip to act like one, and things like inference performance, and that's where the Grace Blackwell 200 superchip is going to shine. Now, a question following that is, does that mean that the Grace Blackwell 200 is bad for x86? Jensen mentions that, hey, look, he thinks that x86 and ARM, which is pretty much the architecture Grace is built on, are both perfectly fine for data centers. There's a reason why Grace is built the way it is. And like I mentioned, the benefit of ARM is that they can mold the NVIDIA system architecture around the CPU so that we can create this thing called chip to chip. And as a result, the Grace Hopper is insanely great for certain applications like multi-physics. So the x86 market is still here, and Jensen believes it's still going to continue to be here, but there's going to be certain instances where you need to pick the Grace Blackwell 200 opposed to the Blackwell 200 and an x86 CPU. Now, another question was talking about Nvidia's market share for this accelerating market. And they mentioned that, hey, look, they believe it's at least a $250 billion annual market. And Nvidia believes that they will have a much higher market share in this space compared to the past. So, really, really great news for Nvidia. Talking about market, this is a great way to think of Nvidia. Nvidia is not a market share taker, they are a market share maker. Everything that they do is new. Everything that they've created, from the GPU market back in 1999 to all these AI solutions, is new. So they don't work in markets that have already been created. They're focused on creating new solutions and giving their chips a purpose by creating first a chip, then some form of application, and then working their way into creating and bringing developers into their platforms. And that's why NVIDIA doesn't really, to some extent, have any competition, because they are making this market. They're not taking it, they're creating it. So, really great to hear that from Jensen and to see how he overall sees NVIDIA as a company in general. Now, I do have one more slide here. I think this is number 11, and it's talking about NIM. So, NIM is NVIDIA's inference microservice. What exactly is this? So, they mentioned that in order for every company to be able to build their own AI, operate their own AI, deploy their own AI, run it across multiple clouds, somebody is going to have to do that computer science for them. And computer science, for that type of application where you're doing all that, you need a world class team. And so instead of doing this for every single model, for every single company, for every single configuration, they decided to create the tools and the tooling and the operations where they can package up large language models for the very first time. So again, this is that kind of concept that we talked about of Nvidia giving their chips a purpose. So the AI market is amazing, and the AI market can bring a lot of opportunities for a lot of companies, but a lot of companies don't have the necessarily computer science workforce to be able to develop those type of applications and be able to develop it efficiently and effectively at the same time. So Nvidia again is making this software solution to some extent to be able to sell to those companies that believe that they didn't have the right task player to create their own AI applications. And the way Nvidia is going to win out of this is they're able to kind of license their GPUs at 4,500 per GPU per year. So not only are they selling chips, they're also selling software. And for you to use their software, you need a license per GPU on a yearly basis to overall run that large language model. So we can see this is going to be a high margin segment for Nvidia, and I'm really excited to see the future of this company. So those are the 11 things that really caught my attention during this Q&A session. Like I mentioned, the one I'm super excited about is the secret gold mine that so many companies are sitting on right now. So, in the upcoming days, make sure to stay tuned, make sure to subscribe. I'll take a closer look at about maybe 5 to 10 companies that can benefit from this market right now. So, have a good day and see you all next time.